I'm a professional. I have no problems. I create no problems, and I'm here to solve all of your problems. This is what you want to project out when you're going into the interview. Hey guys, it's great to see you again. If you are new here though, my name is Bill Benoist. I'm a certified professional career coach in Silicon Valley, and in today's video, I want to talk about interviewing. Specifically, 8 interview mistakes that you can make that can cost you the job. Now, before we begin, I want to just point out, I want to recognize that you guys are professionals. I mean, my channel is built around working with individuals in mid to late career professionals who are in career transition looking for another job. So I know that you would not be doing these things intentionally, but I still want you to hear these out because they can be important, because sometimes we can make these mistakes unintentionally, but they're mistakes that can cost you. So you got to be very careful of it. Number one is what the hiring manager would perceive as lying in the interview or lying on the resume. So again, I recognize you would not do this intentionally, but you got to be careful about how your resume is presented. You know, I had a situation years ago where I had the first position on my resume, I had already left the company, and it had shown that I had left the company, and then right underneath that was my business, which I was still going through. So if you're looking at a traditional chronological resume, usually your last company is the most current company that you work for, and then everything below that is companies that you're no longer working for. Well, a recruiter looked at my resume in that 6-second scan and missed that, and so when they called me, they thought I was still working at this one company, and when I said I wasn't, and I said I showed this on the resume, they went back and they looked at it and they were like, oh, okay. And I could just tell their voice had changed, and I think they were like, I was trying to hide something. So lying on a resume, 71% of hiring managers said that it's a deal breaker if they catch somebody lying on the resume. Number 2 is texting or taking a phone call during the interview. Again, I don't think any of you guys would ever do that out there, but how many of you have forgotten to turn off your cell phone going into the interview? Because just as annoying could be that vibration happening, or somebody calling and you forgot to turn off the phone and you got to excuse yourself. So you could go ahead and silent the phone, and all that's doing is just really kind of showing that hiring manager out there that you didn't take the necessary precautions. So it could be a deal breaker. Number 3 is swearing. All right, inappropriate language during the interview. You know, sometimes we get comfortable with the hiring manager and we're joking and stuff like that, and maybe you say something like, wow, that damn thing. No, that could really be a deal breaker. So be careful about using inappropriate language. Number 4, dressing inappropriately. Now, this could be underdressed, and that's what I think most people would think, is that they're not coming dressed accordingly, but you could also be overdressed as well. You know, this also reminds me of a very quick story. I was in the banking industry before I got into technology. I was a bank manager. I used to wear a suit and tie all the time. When I got into technology, the very first job that I ever applied for, it was like a desktop support position with an antivirus company, and I went in wearing a suit and tie, and the person that came out, and this would have eventually been my manager, they looked at me and they said, Bill, they said, you know, we're a very casual environment, and this individual was dressed in jeans, tennis shoes, and a pullover shirt. He says, you don't need to dress up for this position. So the interview went really well, and a couple of days later they called me back for a second interview. I didn't heed the warning. I wanted to impress them, so I found a different suit and a different shirt and tie, went in there, and that kind of backfired on me. The person said, you know, I thought I had mentioned to you that you don't need to dress up for this position. And I'll tell you, there was no third interview, there was no job offer on that because I didn't follow the instructions. So number 5 is talking negatively about past employers or colleagues. Remember what I said in the beginning? You're a professional, you have no problems, and you create no problems. When you talk negatively about a past employer or people that you worked with, right off the bat, that leads a person to think that you are a person that can be creating some problems out there. So no matter how bad it was at your last company, don't talk bad about the company or anybody that you worked with. All right, number 6 is knowing nothing about the position that you're applying for or the company that you're applying to or even the person that's interviewing you. And to me, this is a really big one because I think a lot of people do skip this one. I know some professionals that will also do this as well. And maybe inadvertently because maybe they applied for a position several weeks ago and they've just been called for an interview. What you want to do is whatever position that you're applying for, always take a snapshot, a copy of that job description, put it in a file because a couple of weeks later you will have forgotten about all of the requirements of that position. But also when you get that interview, make sure that you're going to the website and you are just reviewing every single web page on that company's website. Google them, see what kind of news that they're on, if there's any news as far as a Google search. And if you know the person's name that's going to be interviewing you, go into LinkedIn and do a little research on them. They may get an alert that lets them know that somebody was looking at their profile, and then they go in, they see it was you. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing because it shows that you're very interested in this position and the person that's interviewing you. And something else, and I've talked about this in previous videos before, and that is it's your resume and your phone screen that validates your competence. Once you go into the interview, although there could still be some questions that are validating your competence, it's really about validating your compatibility. Are you going to be a good fit on the team? And one of the best things that you can do to get into rapport very quickly is to show if there's any kind of connections out there that you might have with that individual. And you can see that on LinkedIn. So maybe there's a second connection that you can bring up, or a school that you went to, or even a group that you belong to. So make sure that you do your due diligence on LinkedIn, but also just research the heck out of the company. So if they ask you, so do you know much about the company before, you can blow their socks off. All right, number 7, showing up late. Okay, this should be a no-brainer. You need to get to that interview about 15 or 20 minutes early. Now, you do not need to go up and check into the interview. In fact, that could actually work against you. No, stay in your car and review your star stories and your SOAR stories. And by the way, if you don't know what a star or a SOAR story is, make sure that you check out the link in the upper right hand corner, as I do have a video on exactly what these are. They're the way to answer behavioral type of questions. And I often, I'll mention in that video, I say get to the interview about 15 minutes early and sit in your car and review your star stories and your SOAR stories. So if this is something you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure you check out that link. And finally, number 8, and I know you're going to get a giggle out of this, but trust me, people do this, and that is showing up intoxicated to the interview. I get it. Interviewing could be nerve-wracking. In fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics tell us that the average tenure in any position is 4.6 years. And if you're over the age of 50, it's closer to 10. The bottom line is we don't interview that often, and it's completely natural to feel a little nervous. And hiring managers do recognize this, so they do know that it can be nerve-wracking, but you don't need to be taking a shot of scotch or whiskey before the interview because it can be picked up on your breath, right? And stay away from the Valium and the Ativan and the Xanax because you don't want your eyes dilated either. No, you know what the best solution is to the nervousness? It's preparation. In fact, that also brings me to something else. In the notes section below, I have a free masterclass, completely free, on interviewing. It's an hour and a half, now it's an hour and 20 minutes long, but it covers the interview in detail, the top 5 questions that you really need to prepare for, the best answers to those questions, as well as making sure that your resume is impactful and doesn't get caught up in an applicant tracking system. We even go into LinkedIn and designing a LinkedIn profile that works for you 24/7. So definitely check that out. But the bottom line is preparation is key. So no need to, take a little, dip of that scotch or whiskey or vodka beforehand. It could, again, definitely be a deal breaker and work against you. So guys, anyway, these are the 8 tips. I hope you found this information informative and useful. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, make sure that you do so. Hit the bell notification, as I do upload new career tips and strategies every Tuesday, and I'd hate for you to miss anything. Thanks for stopping by, and I look forward to seeing you next week.